Let's bring in my panel. Karim Sadjadpour is one of the world's top experts on Iran.
Karim Sadjadpour.
Karim Sadjadpour, thank you so much for joining us.
Joining me now from Washington, Karim Sadjadpour.
Karim Sadjadpour.
Karim Sadjadpour of the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Gentlemen, thank you for being with us.
For more insight on tomorrow's election in Iran,
Karim Sadjadpour is an associate.
Karim Sadjadpour is an Iran expert.
Now a senior associate at one of America's oldest and most prestigious think tanks, the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Karim Sadjadpour has been seen on every major network, and he contributes to BBC TV and radio, CNN, National Public Radio, PBS NewsHour, and Al Jazeera.
Do you buy that they might be willing to plot attacks?
I'm skeptical, and what's paramount for the Iranian Supreme Leader is to stay in power. And if they were to commit a major act of terror on the United States, I think he would be gambling with his own life and the life of the regime itself.
Frequently called upon to brief world leaders, he regularly testifies before Congress and has lectured at Harvard, Princeton, and Stanford universities. In 2007, he was named a young global leader by the World Economic Forum in Davos.
Iranian presidential elections tend to be unfree, unfair, and unpredictable. There's two wonderful quotes from the Russian Revolution, the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia, which I think brilliantly capture what's taking place in today's Middle East. And the first quote is from Lenin. And he said that sometimes decades pass and nothing happens. And then sometimes weeks pass and decades happen. And I think this brilliantly captures the situation in a country like Egypt, places like Syria, Libya, Tunisia, places that were almost frozen in time under the same autocratic rule, kind of immune to the forces of the trend lines of democratization, which were taking place elsewhere in the world. What made Khamenei successful is I think he understood an important Machiavellian rule, which is in authoritarian regimes, it's much more important to be feared than to be loved. There's a quote I love from Saturday Night Live from A. Whitney Brown, and he said that I'm not a vegetarian because I love animals, I'm a vegetarian because I hate plants. And I think that that's good. That's good. I mean, we should, our engagement with Iran, dialoguing with Iran, shouldn't be considered a gift to the regime itself because we like them. In fact, these hardline elements in Iran really don't want to be engaged. They've thrived in isolation. Enmity towards the United States has become an inextricable part of their identity. And I think by continuing to engage them, if they don't reciprocate, you expose the fact that the problem lies in Tehran more than Washington. Fareed, I think 2,500 years of Persian civilization makes me hopeful that this current kind of isolated Iran, which is a pariah state, is an anomaly of history and geography. On the other hand, 36 years of the policies of the Islamic Republic makes me sober. Let me end on a hopeful note, which is a parable I love about the king of Cambodia in the 1950s, and he was contemplating where to send his son for university, the prince. And his options were either Moscow State University during the time of the Soviet Union or the Sorbonne in Paris. And a couple of days later, he told his aides, I've decided to send the prince to Moscow State University. And I said, why would you do that, Your Majesty? He said, well, if I send him to the Sorbonne, I'll become a communist. And I think
but not Johns Hopkins.
Not Johns Hopkins. The paradox in today's Middle East, General Petraeus and Valley have put this as well, that Iran is the most anti-American regime and the most pro-American society. By virtue of having lived under a repressive theocracy for 3.5 decades, they don't romanticize about joining mosque and state like much of the Arab world does. They romanticize about separating mosque and state. So, the nuclear program is very important. It's an important challenge, but let's not forget society here, because ultimately what will help resolve our differences with Iran is not simply isolating a hardline regime, but thinking about policies which align ourselves with the interests of the Iranian people, not just against the interests of the Iranian regime.